everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my dear friend Victoria Reynolds. Hi, Victoria.
Hi, Kathy. It's so great to see you as always.
Yeah. So, you guys, I am so excited to have us have this conversation today. It's a perfect time for all of us to get the real scoop, the real high integrity, the truth tellers to give us some insights into what's happening right now and how we can navigate all these changes. And I can vouch for Victoria. I've known her, I think, 10 years or something now. Wow.
A long time.
And she's a spiritual luminary, a story healer, a thought leader, and an oracle of freedom. And I can say that during the very beginning of the shutdown, Victoria and I were on Zoom almost every day, supporting each other through all of the chaos, because Victoria is an Elohim. She's an angel, and she's a walk-in of this type of angel that is very high energy and can see. She's a seer. So what we're going to be gifted with today is an insight into all these changes we're going through and how you can navigate them for your highest good. So with that,
Thank you, Kathy, for that.
So part of what I really wanted people to know is Victoria has authored a lot of books. We're publishing one of them, but she has just launched a book. It's barely birthed. That's called Recreating Earth. So why don't we start with your journey to being a seer, so people can understand how you can see and how this skill that you work with the higher realms, how you've been able to do that.
Well, one of the things I discovered a few years ago, you and I have known each other for, like you said, 10, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, 10 years. I think we met in 2012. And I had just written my first book. I was trying to figure out how to feel comfortable on camera. You and I met in this on camera course.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't really know where or why I was receiving this information. I knew that I was Victoria. So at the time, I went by the name Margaret. I don't know if you even remember that. My legal name was Margaret. I ended up changing it to Victoria. Victoria is my higher self name. And I am Victoria, Elohim of Freedom, embodied in human form. And I chose to embody at this time because my purpose on the planet is to assist in the freedom of humanity and all life on Earth from this old fear-based reality we're moving out of. And I would receive these telepathic communications and write them down. I didn't really know why I was given carte blanche access to the guardians, as I call them. So I communicate with Yeshua, Archangel Michael, Saint Germain, Mother Mary, and Metatron, who is assisting with this particular book that I just finished. And I discovered it's because I'm actually one of them. So I telepathically meet with them in what's called the council chambers. It's a room on the New Jerusalem, which is a ship. It's a fifth-dimensional spaceship called the New Jerusalem. And there's a room there called the council chambers. And so I telepathically communicate with them in that room. And we sit and we have council meetings. And the information that comes through is a part of these meetings that I have with them. I sit with my notebook and I write down what they speak through me, and then I have to go back later and read it because I don't remember what I write when I write it. It just flows through me. And the same thing when I'm communicating as well, even on camera, people ask me to repeat what I said, and I honestly don't know what I've said because it's what I call love streaming.
Right.
So I'm love streaming information from the divine. I also communicate directly with Source Creator, Mother, Father, Creator, primarily with Mother Creator. plenty of other people talk to the masculine aspect of God. I work primarily with the feminine. I also communicate with Mother Earth. And this book that I've just finished is a combination of, of information from Mother Earth, Metatron, and Yeshua. And Kathy, I don't know if you remember, but about a year and a half ago, I had a session with you. All these years of knowing you, I'd never actually had an official session with you. And I had a session with you about a year and a half ago, and you said, "Oh, you're going to be writing another new book, a new kind of book, a book like you've never written before." And I didn't know what that was because all of my other books are my higher self communicating with me on behalf of humanity. And this other book I started sensing was a book that was written on behalf of Mother Earth, Mama Gaia, as I prefer to call her. And at the same time, I started seeing Metatron's cube was showing up all over in my life. And I knew there was a correlation between the two. The Mama Gaia wanted me to write a book on her behalf for all of the beings on her being. So we are all part of her, and she is all a part of us. In the same way that as mothers, as we give birth to our children, we recognize that our children are a part of us. And so each of us, as beings on Mother Earth, are part of her. There is no separation, and she loves us the same way we love our own children. So she wanted a book to be written about what is possible for all of us when we understand what we are truly capable of. And so then Metatron came in, and he started working with me on this book because he's the keeper of the scrolls. He is the scribe of God, and he already knows the future of Earth. So he's showing me what Earth looks like before we actually create it, what this new Earth looks like.
Perfect.
And then, of course, I have Yeshua, who is also one of my co-teachers. I started realizing about 10 years ago that part of my purpose on the planet is to teach spiritual freedom in the same way that he did. And so many of my teachings are sanctioned by Yeshua. This is the being a lot of people would call Jesus, that he has asked me to teach what he really, which is the spiritual freedom of humanity. So my ultimate purpose on the planet is the spiritual freedom of all life on earth, because ultimately all freedoms are spiritual freedom. So recreating earth is that. It is this gift that Mother Earth has asked me to create on behalf of her to all of her children, to let them see what is possible. When we take on the role of consciously creating reality, we seek that wants actually to be birthed through all of us. One thing that's interesting that people need to understand is that before anything is actually physically manifested in our reality, it already exists in the field of creation. It already exists in the higher realms. We simply call it into existence, into our reality. And so this book is about that. It's a gift for humanity to recognize what we're really capable of and to begin consciously creating it.
That's perfect. That's perfect. The higher perspective is from love. And
Always.
and what I'd love for you to, if you can, talk about that perspective, because the earthly love and the Hollywood version of love, even though I watched Pride and Prejudice the other day and they kissed and it was like, oh, that kind of love. But but the love, the soup that we actually live in, the conscious unseen part of this is all love, which is
Mhm.
what Mother Gaia is reminding us about. Could you talk a little about love, if you could?
You know what's interesting, Kathy, is that I've never heard this before, but you said that soup, and the word that came in was supra. This is a supra love.
Yes.
And it's fascinating because I've never heard it called that. But this is the love that is all that is so bigger, so much bigger and richer and more powerful and more um, omnipresent than many of us can even begin to grasp. The closest thing I can come to it is the love that a mother feels for her child, which is pure, absolute, and unconditional. No strings attached, no conditions. It is absolute. And so we as human beings are the ones that create the conditions upon this love.
Right.
And there are no conditions. It is always present, everywhere present, absolute, omni, ultra, supra present in everything and everyone. And there isn't anything that isn't it. So when people start going into fear, fear is really the perception of the absence of love.
Right.
But there is no absence of it. There is only perception of the absence of it.
Right.
And when we get out of this illusion of fear and come back home to the truth that love is all that is, it is what everything is made of. Every microcosm of the universe is love experiencing itself. And in every single one of us are love having a human experience. That's it. And when human beings have this perception that we're separate from it, and as soon as we go into this belief that we're separate from it, we go into what I call it separation anxiety. So for those of us who are moms, we can remember what it was like taking our little toddler for the first time to preschool, and how the poor little baby just cries because mommy's not there. I'm getting a little teary-eyed because I remember I cried when I dropped my daughter off for the first time at preschool, because that separation anxiety is so palpable. And so what humanity's been experiencing as a whole is an unconscious separation anxiety.
Perfect.
Mama never left us. We just have the illusion that she had left us. And when we all remember that love has always been there, just waiting for us to remember, then we come back to the truth that every single one of us are infinitely powerful, because love is all it is, and it is the most powerful force in the universe, because it is the creative force that is and creates all things. We just need to remember that it is us. We all have it in us.
Right.
And to no longer believe in that we are separated from it.
So from an angelic sense, how do the angels bring us the awareness of this love? Because all of the fear and the programs are created out of a different energy than love. They are created out of an energy of maybe dominance or order, or
Right.
or of not trusting. There's very little trust in the order programs, because you need this order in order to operate, right?
Right.
So how does this love work in your life, Victoria? Because you are a great example. There's very few people, I can count them on one hand, that live from love and are always looking for the loving description of what just happened in 3D. I mean, when something happens, someone bumps into your car, you don't automatically become a victim. You try to look at it from love's perspective, which is an angelic perspective. So could you talk about looking at the things that are happening right now from that loving perspective, so that maybe we could learn how to do it?
Well, I actually ask myself that question. How can I see this through the eyes of love?
Perfect.
Because so two answering two questions. One, this narrative that's been created to keep humanity in fear, understanding that fear actually is a vibration of love. It took me a while to grasp that because when I first started coming into this awareness of who I am, actually, before I even knew who I was, someone told me I was a light worker, and I had no idea what that meant. This was clear back in 2009. And it's the first time I'd heard the term light worker. And I said, what is that? She said, oh, you'll figure it out. This is one of my spiritual teachers. And she said, you have the ability to ask, and the answers will be shown to you. I didn't even know I had that ability. So I went home and I sat on the couch and I said, okay, what is a light worker? And the answer came in. I was really surprised that I actually had the ability to have the answer shown to me. And then looking back through my life, going all the way back to childhood, I realized I always had that ability to ask, and then the answer would be made known. Um, and about that time, I was told that fear is the opposite of love, where many of us are told that hate is the opposite of love. So, understanding then if fear is the opposite of love, hate is actually a vibration of fear. People hate what they fear.
Right.
And that when we realize that the core of all of this that is causing people to be anything less than loving is fear based. Well, fear actually is the lowest vibration of love. If you think about love as a vessel, and at the top is infinitely expansive. This is pure, absolute, unconditional love. And at the very, very bottom of that, as you go down in these vibrational frequencies, they get become more and more and more and more restrictive. And at the very bottom are these fear-based emotions that are very restrictive. Well, fear actually is a vibration, the lowest vibration of love. And what it is it exists to on a very small level. That's why it's very small at the bottom. It exists to in a form of self-preservation. So fear exists as self-preservation. So if we had no love for ourselves, we would have no interest in preserving our life. If we had no love for our children, we'd have no interest in preserving their lives. So fear is exists as a form of self-preservation. What happened is that those who I call the controllers on our planet learn how to use fear as a means of control. If you can keep humanity in fear, they're easier to control because they're always in hyper state of awareness, always like the lion is chasing me kind of emotion. So when you keep people in that hyper state of fear, they're much easier to round up and corral and control. So fear is being used as a means of control. It was never meant to be that. So when we as a collective of souls chose to incarnate on earth, we chose to incarnate in this learning environment where fear was a part of it, but not meant to be so much that it drives the human experience, which is this fear-based reality we've been living in. So as we recognize then that fear has been used to manipulate and control humanity, and then choose consciously to move into seeing everything through the eyes of love, just recognize, I see where fear is playing a role here. Now, how can I see this through the eyes of love? When someone scratches my car, how can I see this through the eyes of love?
Right.
And now, when it comes to the scratching car, more than likely it was an accident. Someone was just having an off day. They didn't do it intentionally. It wasn't an agenda toward you. Things happen. And so one way to be able to look at this experience is what is it that I can learn from this experience so that I don't repeat this experience again? What is the lesson? Maybe someone's trying to get my attention that I just was that I need. How can I see this experience, whatever this experience is? How can I see it through the eyes of love, and what can I learn from it?
Perfect.
And when we approach everything from those two perspectives, all of the fear and the anger and the resentment and the blame and all those fear-based emotions literally just dissipate into the nothingness that they came from.
Right. Well, they serve as contrast, but they also allow you to see what you're attracting. If you have a victim overlay of I'm a victim, you're going to keep creating scenarios where you get to experience disgusting, horrible.
Right. And it's interesting you use those words because I am are the two most powerful words in the universe. And when you say I am a victim, you're basically affirming to the universe that's what you are.
Right, you're
And
calling it
you're
in.
calling it forward. You're calling it in.
Right,
And
right,
until you learn the lesson and you say, you know what? I am not a victim. I am no longer a victim. I choose to no longer be a victim. I choose to no longer see my experiences from a victim perspective. And then you say, I feel hurt in this moment.
right.
But saying that you feel something from an experience is different than labeling it as the beingness that you are.
Well, there's a lot of feelings that are coming up right now with all these changes. There's and it's also frustration from the length of time everything's taking to change. But how do you suggest that people learn to trust that everything is going for their highest good?
Because everything always is. The universe does not conspire against us. The universe is always conspiring for us.
Yep.
And when enough of us realize that we are the creators of our reality, when people ask why it's taking so long, part of the reason it's taking so long is because we are focusing on the world we don't want.
Right.
So the more we focus on the world we don't want to create, the more we're actually creating it. The universe, the law of attraction, the universe, the laws of the universe don't judge between what you do and don't want. It just responds to what we focus on. So if what we're focusing on is all the horrible things that are happening in the world, we will continue to create those.
Right, right. Well, it's almost as though it's entertainment. It's it when people talk about a holographic universe, it's almost like you don't need to watch a movie; you can just create your own. But okay, so I want to go back to your incredibly talented connection to sea, and how this new book that was channeled from Metatron came in. It's called Recreating Earth. I want to really have people understand your incredible talent that could, and how it can help them with this information. So could we go back to the recreation, whether there's going to be two Earths, or could you talk a little bit about this time period that we're going through that might help everyone understand how to smoothly navigate?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I have a very active third eye. So in writing this book, Metatron was showing me what the future of Earth looks like. And then I have to interpret what I see and put it into human words. One of the things that's interesting for people to understand is that the angelics, God, Source, Mother Earth, they don't speak a particular language. They don't speak English. They speak with impressions and show me visions and visuals, and then I have to translate those through what I call a universal translator. We all have a universal translator, by the way. Anyone can speak to angels and God source. We just have to trust that our translation is correct. So I was given all of these visuals of what the future of Earth looks like, and then having to translate them into the language that my mind understands and pass that forward so that other people can see through their own, through reading these words, be able to envision it for themselves. So one of the other reasons I got the insight to write this book is because so many people have asked me, I don't know what to do. What do I do? What does this look like? And so I was asked to write this book to help people see how to envision what's possible for humanity, and then even steps they can take to start creating it. So that's where this book came from. We are in the process of creating two different realities, which is why it's so important that we become vitally conscious of these realities that are being created. So we've had these infinite number of timelines that have now been brought down to two. We are in the what I call the chrysalis phase of the human experience. So we're moving out of this old reality. We've moved into this chrysalis phase. The caterpillar has now moved into this cocoon phase, this transition phase that we're presently in. And what emerges out of this cocoon is determined by our collective consciousness. It's really important to understand that collective consciousness is not the same as hive mind. Those are two different things. And one, the hive mind is being utilized by those who are using fear as a tool for manipulation to create a global totalitarian reality, where human beings become less than human. They become digitized. Everything in this totalitarian reality is digitized. It is a downgrade of the divine human. The other reality that's being created is a humanitarian reality. Now, this doesn't mean that every human being has a humanitarian purpose. This isn't about creating humanitarian projects just for human beings. It's understanding that within the divine heart of the divine human is a humanitarian heart within every single one of us. In this collective consciousness of the humanitarian heart is this new reality where all life on earth thrives and the divine human blueprint is fully restored and Mama Gaia, Mother Earth, is fully restored. All of us to our highest and greatest potential as this beautiful fifth dimensional reality. What people are calling a fifth dimensional reality, what I've been calling for years, is a love-based reality. In this love-based reality, the divine human is restored to its highest, greatest, and fullest potential, as the earth herself is as well. So we're looking at these two completely different realities that are being created side by side. And if you look, they look almost identical on the surface, but lead to two completely different outcomes. And the one outcome of totalitarianism is being sold to humanity as that the hive mind, the digitized mind, the transhumanism, that everything in our world can be solved with digitizing it. And that actually becomes an ultimate controlled reality where human beings exist, but they don't feel, they don't create. Their consciousness may go on forever in a new form and another form and another form, but there's nothing divine about it. It is alternate. It is artificial. And that reality is being created and projected onto humanity right now by a very, very, very small number of people. It's like 0.001% have this agenda for this world that is fully controlled and fully digitized, and human beings are in essence drones within this. It's funny, the visual I'm getting is the Borg. Yeah, I'm a Trekkie. So, right? So it's the Borg. We're all this one mind connected to the AI mind, and there's no heart. The heart is essentially removed from the human experience, but this heart is where we are connected to the heart of the divine, the heart of love. And that is the humanitarian reality that wants to be birthed through each of us as divine love having a human experience. And we need to understand that these two realities are being created side by side, and every single one of us choose which one of these realities becomes our experience.
Perfect.
And if we don't consciously choose the direction of the humanitarian, fifth dimensional, love based, heart based reality, this totalitarian reality will be created by default.
Right.
And we need to understand we are not willing, as divine beings having a human experience, to become less than human.
Right. Right.
And these are both being created side by side. And each one of us gets to consciously choose which of those realities we assist in creating. We can gather up the masses of humanity, gather together in our the human mind is capable of creating anything it conceives.
Right.
And when we get together and we bring our hearts and our minds together, we can create anything. Or we can sit back and say, I'm just going to allow this to be created for me. Not even knowing that by looking at all the shiny objects out there, we're actually helping to create it.
Right. Right. Well, the question I have about this is I'm a fan of Dolores Cannon's work, and I watched another video of the convoluted universe where she was talking about the backdrop people. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. So I had a message come in a couple of weeks ago about that. I had no idea that I know of Dolores Cannon. I don't follow her work.
Right. Well,
Um,
she's passed.
right, which is what I find it fascinating that she's more popular now than she was when she was here and teaching. And she has been resurrected in a sense in the last couple of years because so many people are just now beginning to grasp what it is she was teaching.
Right.
She was way ahead of her time. And which is fascinating because her time has come and she's not even physically here.
Well,
Although
maybe
she's
she is.
very, very present on the planet.
Maybe she is. That's the thing, is maybe she could, it from a different perspective, she could expand the consciousness that she brought in,
Right.
versus being in the physical body. What was interesting was when we talk about souls. So we're assuming that most of the people that stood in line to get these bodies to be here right now during this incredible opportunity to ascend in body, which means your soul can actually come in and fuse with your vessel, that there was a huge expansion in population. I mean, it went from like 3 billion to 7, almost 8 billion people in a very short, I mean, strangely short amount of time. So how many of these people that are on this earth right now, do you have a sense that how many of them really are soulful beings, or how many are like the backdrop people that Dolores Cannon was talking about? And let me explain that so it's not so confusing and you guys don't have to watch or read all the books. Dolores Cannon and several other beings have said that when you go into an airport, that energy puts together a play platform for all these other beings to be in your scene in the airport going to the gate to get on your plane. But as soon as you leave, that energy is rearranged and used somewhere else, that they aren't real, physical, soulful beings. There are a group of soulful beings that are in your life that are real, but the rest of it is kind of a set for your play. So so I just wanted to explain that to people, and they're the backdrop people. They call them several different names, but do you have any sense on that of how many of those are here and are part of the 8 billion?
Well, you know what's interesting about that? I was saying I got a message about this a few weeks ago. I had no idea other people were talking about this because I don't really follow other people's work. I try to have my information be as pure as possible. So the message that came in a couple of weeks ago, my guidance called them non-player characters. I had no idea they even existed. So the reason my team called them non-player characters is because in a sense we are playing a video game. NPC is a very common term for the younger generation that plays video games. They would understand what an NPC is.
Uh-huh.
And these non-player characters are just here. So what I was being shown is a lot of the homeless people are non-player characters. The people mulling around in crowds are non-player characters. They're just here filling these roles, but they're not actively playing the game. My understanding, when I asked about that, I was shown that it was about a third of the beings here are not necessarily beings who are human souls having a human experience. They are characters in the game.
Okay.
And that, so if you think about a video game where you're playing a video game, our higher self, our soul, is actually the one playing in this avatar that we each have. So if we imagine that we're playing a video game, our higher self is actually controlling what this avatar does and goes, and the decisions we make and all of that, which is why it's so important that we always ask up, what's next? What's best? How can I best be of service? What's the best thing for me to do today? Always asking our higher self.
Perfect.
How to navigate this great human experience. This is the name of the video game we're playing. And navigating around all of the different obstacles and situations that we come into. And that a lot of the characters that are in our periphery, they may be playing their own game, and they're not necessarily a part of our game. So if you think about a video game, and there's all these characters in the video game, a lot of the characters in the video game are just characters. They're not actually playing the game. So my understanding is it's about a third. What's really fascinating is that the human population, as of 2 or 3 days ago, topped 8 billion. So it's interesting that you bring that up. There was an official birth of a baby in Chile, or one of those countries that officially marked at 8 billion. And so what I was being shown a few years ago is that everybody wants to be here right now. This is because the planet herself is also ascending. This is a very rare event across the entire universe is watching to see how we navigate this, because a planet ascending and all of her beings ascending at the same time is a very rare and unique occasion.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why everybody wanted to be here.
Yeah.
The 8 billion, it's interesting. The number I'm hearing is actually 12 billion. There are 8 billion humans, but there are about 12 billion players, or that includes the 4 billion non-player characters. It's interesting. I've never actually put that number together before, but that's what it feels like. It's about a third of the beings on this planet are non-player characters.
Wow.
And the rest are actually playing the game.
So when Metatron explains that when it comes down, and it comes down in these images, and then you translate the best, and you refine and refine and refine the transmission, is there a lot of hope and encouragement for us? That's what we're just getting bad news everywhere else. So I'm just hoping that you could guide us into what the higher view of all of this is, rather than this base view that we're seem to be stuck in.
It's all good news.
Yay.
It's all good news. That this world we are creating is spectacular. We are returning to the garden, as it's often referred to. Those of us in the spiritual community have been saying this for years. We are returning to the garden of Gaia. We're returning to the garden of peace. And so what I was shown about 10 years ago or so is that Earth is a learning planet until we as a collective of souls determine for it to be a planet of peace. And so what I was shown about, I want to say about 6 months ago, time has been moving so fast. It's hard for me to keep track of when this information comes in, that as a collective of souls, we have now chosen for this to be a planet of peace. So if we imagine that the billions of souls got together in a meeting, if you will, and said, okay, we've decided for Earth to no longer be a learning planet. We have decided it's now going to be a planet of peace. We've decided it's now time to return to the garden. And we have decided that this planet is now going to be a planet of paradise. Understand that we have also, as this planet moves around the galaxy, we've entered into the age of Aquarius. We're entering into this photon belt. We're bringing in more light codes from the great central sun. Everything is lining up to support the collective of souls saying, we're now ready for this to be a planet of peace and prosperity for all life on Earth and for the planet herself. So as a collective of souls, we have now chosen that to be the case. We have voted for this to no longer be a learning planet. So for all of those people out there who have been saying forever that we as a collective of souls chose for this to be a learning planet, that is absolutely correct. And very recently, within our understanding of time, we have now chosen for it to be a planet of peace and prosperity. And so now we are going to begin creating and manifesting with that new understanding. And with that new understanding, now fear is being dissipated and removed from the planet.
Perfect.
And in this new love-based, heart-based reality, fear essentially no longer exists. Now there may still be a little bit of that loving yourself enough for self-preservation, but that comes down to it not really fear. It's more of, I'm eating better, healthier food because I genuinely love myself. And why would I put anything in my body that would harm me? Those kinds of choices. So that eventually fear in this reality we're creating, fear no longer exists.
Right.
Because it is such a low vibration. In this humanitarian love-based reality we're creating. Now, my understanding, when somebody asked me, what does that mean? What do you mean by the collective of souls? Was it 51% of the souls? What I was shown is it's 2/3 of the souls of humanity have chosen to now move into a reality that is, in a sense, what I was shown as a respite for the souls. And so this is going to become a planet of paradise and respite. There are souls, apparently 1/3 of the souls, who have chosen to still continue learning. So my understanding is that those thirds of the souls of humanity will continue learning, but not in the same reality as the rest of us who are choosing a planet of peace. There has been for a while now a second Earth that has been created. So when we think about alternate universes, there is another Earth that has been created where those souls will continue to play out that learning experience because they're not ready yet to ascend. They might be young souls and they haven't learned enough to be able to become masters of the human experience, and they want to continue learning. And they will continue learning on this other reality. And right now they're both coexisting. Both of these realities have coexisted since 2012. That's why we see two completely different realities. It's called the duality reality right now. And these two realities are starting to split off, and eventually they will be so separate, beings will no longer be able to make that leap from this lower density learning reality and then make the leap into this higher density love-based reality. So these two realities are being created side by side. My understanding is there will come a time in the very near future where every human being will make a conscious choice about which of those realities. So right now, humanity we're making choices, but those aren't fully conscious choices, because in this fear we've been living in, they're coerced choices.
Right.
They're manipulated choices. They're they're all fear-based choices, what I call fear disguised as love. And that we have to get really, really good at recognizing, is this choice really love, or is it fear disguised as love?
Right.
And the more people start to recognize, oh, this is fear disguised as love, and the more loving choice is this, then that old fear-based reality will start to dissipate because we are no longer supporting it. So we are moving into this conscious choice. And some beings will still consciously choose that fear-based totalitarian reality. That will get to play out on a different planet, on a different playing fields.
Right, right. Well, what I really love all of this because we're getting to a point where we actually use our capabilities as the divine human
Right.
in a totally different way. I mean, there's been a whole army of people since 2012, I would say. So a lot of them are making comments over here, which I'll put up in a second. But what's happened is that there's been a lot of people that have been looking to work from service to others
Hmm.
for most of their adult life. And what they're seeing is they're not having to fight to be in service for others. The Law of One books, the raw material, they said that the last 26,000 year cycle, that only 100 humans on the whole planet could ascend. They said, and they were in South America. And now look at how far we've come. We've come where even with the oppressive media and the fear mongering, that many people have woken up to their unconditional love model of their consciousness and are living from there. So I mean, look at how far we've come in relatively short amount of time.
Well, the number of beings who have incarnated here, there is a, we can call them light workers. It is an army. There's an army of ascended masters, spiritual beings, angelics, benevolent ETs who have all decided to incarnate in human form in order to lead the rest of humanity forward. So in this last cycle, in the last 11,000 years, when fear came to the planet and really started using this fear to manipulate humanity, there have always been masters who have come in and who have helped pull humanity out of the darkness and lead humanity forward. These would be beings such as Buddha and Yeshua, who come in and bring the light back in so that humanity doesn't go too far down the this spiral of fear and into the darkness. But what's happened in the last 50 years, and this has really been since the early 1960s. I'm told 1963. Other people have been told 1962, that this is when love came back to the planet. And more and more and more beings who are incarnating in human form are incarnating already as masters in the vibration of love, and then bringing that love back to the planet, because ultimately the plan is for everyone to ascend. No one gets left behind
Perfect.
except for those who consciously choose it. So we volunteered, and there is an army, what I call the hosts of angels, have volunteered to be here in human form to help guide the rest of humanity into what's really possible. When we remember who we are, when human beings remember their divine humanness, and they've just forgotten. They're like little children who have forgotten who they are. When babies are born, they remember that they are divine beings, and then they forget. So, our role as leaders, who we chose to incarnate, to take on these leadership roles in order to remind the rest of humanity who they are. And that's why we feel this call of service to others. We didn't come here in service to ourselves. We came here in service to the highest and greatest good of all life on earth.
That's right.
And that is what we serve forward. And we've been given a buffet with which to serve humanity. And when we're not of service to others, it's painful,
Right.
because we know that we're not here to serve the purpose for which we incarnated. And now that there is an army of us and we're all recognizing it, and we're taking, I call it an army because I use this beautiful visual of taking up arms with each other. It's different than the old visual of you got to take up arms and fight with your swords and your guns and your weapons. Our weapons are the sword of truth, arms with each other, being here on camera with each other, writing books to lift each other up. We are an army. taking up arms, locking arm in arm, and marching across the earth to lift up all of humanity.
Beautiful. I think the other thing that I just want to compliment you on so much is this concept of transcending fear, and how you have used your own experience, your own life experience, to guide people, excuse me, to guide people to transcend the fear of this other reality and choose the divine path. Do you want to talk a little bit about your classes, and how you help people with transcending fear a little bit?
Sure. So, Transcending Fear was the first book I wrote. I wrote this in 2012. Actually, I started writing it in 2010. So, for people that think books just happen, you have an idea, and 90 days later, your book is published, it doesn't quite work that way. It takes me about 2 years to write a book because the information starts to come in and then it gets defined and it gets moved around and it gets. So, Transcending Fear initially wasn't a book. It was my own experience as after the 2008 recession when my life crumbled. And what I didn't know at the time is that very often our awakening experiences almost always involve a near death experience of some kind. So that's actually what's happening on the planet right now. That the planet, our collective reality, is experiencing a near death experience. This is vital to the awakening of humanity. So I call this my midlife rebirth. Um, Now I call it a midlife holy shift. It's just kind of a fun play on words. And really, this rebirth is what is happening to the collective of humanity right now. Is what is meant in which when Yeshua said you must be born again, he's not talking about becoming a Christian. It's about being born again with to the love of who you actually are. And in order to be rebirthed in the loving, this often requires a complete breakdown of everything we thought we were. And so 2008 did that for me, collapsed everything in my life. And a lot of other people who are probably watching this experience the same thing. 2008 was a necessary part, as painful as it was. It was a necessary part of waking up the light workers so they could start doing their work. So transcending fear was a process that my higher self was now embodied in me, was giving me to be able to heal my life from that experience. And what I was being shown is that everything I had been taught as a child in my very patriarchal fundamentalist religion was fear-based. And so this was all about undoing all the fear-based beliefs from my childhood and learning how to process my life. It's also what's often referred to as shadow processing. I don't really call it that. I call it transcending your life, processing your life, but ultimately shadow processing is a part of it, of being able to look at everything that has ever occurred in your life and processing it so that you learn how to love even the most painful parts of your life. So ultimately, transcending fear is learning how to transcend, rise above and beyond all the fear-based beliefs from your life to this point, so that these stories then become a source of power that lift you up rather than baggage that you drag along behind you.
Perfect.
And so this class that I teach, the transcendence process, is based on the process in transcending fear. As I said, it actually wasn't a book. It was in notebooks all over my house. And I decided to put it on the computer, and it, like magic, turned out to be kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. It put itself into place as a process that I now teach.
I think this process would be very helpful for so many people right now, because there's a lot of grief where people are not celebrating the changes that are happening. They're worried about the stock market, or they're worried about the financial markets, and there's a lot of hype about it.
Right.
Whereas when you've got um, you transcended your past, and then took the reins of your life and recreated it in a whole different way. That's a great model for so many people going through all these changes right now.
Yeah, it's a very transformative program, and it's interesting because a lot of the people who take this course are people who have left religion and they're trying to figure out how to undo all those fear-based
Wow.
religious beliefs.
Wow.
Because religion has been used, although at the core of it are these beautiful love, light, spiritual concepts, it has also been used to hold humanity in fear.
Right.
And to keep us separate from the divine. So a lot of these, they may have come through our religiosities, but they're still playing a role within the collective reality, whether they're from religion or not. And so this is a way of being able to look at these fear-based beliefs and how to transmute them. So it actually lifts us up. This is the process, that this transcendence process that takes you up the spiritual spiral. What people call 4D, the fourth dimensional bridge, is actually a spiritual spiral that takes us out of the old fear-based reality and into the consciousness of unconditional love. And this is a process that moves you up the spiritual spiral. So when you arrive here, all there is love.
Perfect.
And so I have used my own traumatic experiences of being able to teach other people how to do that within their own lives. And so this transcendence process class that I teach, the next one starts up in January. I've also decided to create, and I don't have the class yet, to create a what I'm calling Ascension Academia. So it isn't necessarily a class where you go and you take lessons and you graduate from the academy. It's a continual study of ascension. And that I have starting up in January as well. And you can't register for it yet because I haven't created the links yet. But it feels like it's so important because people are asking these questions. How can we be in the continual study of ascension?
Right.
And it isn't a one and done. That's why you can't have an Ascension Academy. I went to Ascension Academy and now graduated. It doesn't work that way. It is a continual process upward, a continual study. And what's really important for people to understand what's happening in the world right now. 2008 was an example of a complete economic collapse.
Mm-hmm.
And that was necessary to wake up a whole bunch of people. These collapses exist specifically as awakening experiences. If we don't wake up, the universe gives us a 2x4 to the back of the head. That's what happens. This is so 2008 was an example of a lot of people lost their homes, they lost their houses, they lost their livelihoods, and it was a catalyst for a spiritual awakening for a lot of us as light workers who were intended to wake up early to help humanity through. Then the 2020 lockdown situation was another catalyst for great awakening. Masses of humanity woke up because of that negative experience. And so what we're going to see now, as the collapse of all of our systems are going to start collapsing, not just the financial system, but all of our systems are going to start collapsing, which is a great thing. We've been saying this for the last 20 years, that all of our systems need to change. This is a gift that is being given to us to recreate all of those systems as they collapse. So it's really important when you see all this collapse happening, it's actually for our good, because we get to rebuild them in a way that does serve humanity. Right now, all of our systems really only serve a few, right, and keep the rest captive. We get to recreate all of them with entirely new concepts. Well, what's going to happen as all these systems continue to collapse is that the rest of humanity will wake up. There have been awakening experiences that have come along throughout different phases of the human experience, particularly since the early 1960s. And with each one of those awakening experiences, more people more popcorn pops, right? More people wake up. And there was a great awakening that occurred during 2020, which is why so many people are right now saying, oh my gosh, I just woke up in the last 2 years. Yes, that was an event that was allowed. Remember, people are calling this a war between light and darkness, good and evil. All of it is divine.
Yes.
It is allowed specifically to wake people up. The darkness always works on behalf of the light.
Perfect.
So those dark experiences of, oh my gosh, the world is falling apart, is specifically to wake humanity up.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Well, I hope that people, I have been putting your website up as a banner, and I've been putting it in the comments. I'll make sure that everyone knows to go to Reynolds.com to follow and get your free books, and to get to follow your YouTube channel, because as you can see, there are some people that are giving good news. There are people that are embodying the love that is available to all of us, and they're showing up in their glory to guide us with words, vocabulary, actually, of how to navigate these changing times. So, Victoria, thank you so much. Is there anything else that, any other way that you'd like people to connect with you?
Well, the best way is on my website, victoriareynolds.com, and then my YouTube channel, which is, I actually have two YouTube channels. Fearless and Free TV is my official show. And then I also have a personal YouTube channel. On that channel, that's where I put interviews that I've had with other people. So your show, for example, I will highlight on that channel. So they're two different channels, two different content. And so I have those two. When you go to my website, I do have a free book there. It is all pretty much about the conversation that you and I have been having. It's all about the Great Awakening and the ascension and what's happening on the planet right now.
Beautiful.
And just to let people know, sometimes the autoresponder doesn't work. I have no idea why. If it doesn't work, just shoot me, send me a message on my contact page, and I will send you the free book. I have to manually do it every once in a while for people. So don't be upset or angry if the autoresponder doesn't work. My website designer is trying to figure out why every once in a while it doesn't work.
Why?
And I did just recently update that book. Just a few days ago. It has not included, I have not updated the free one. So if you want to purchase it as a softbound book, it is available on Amazon with this new added chapter.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I want to encourage everyone to look up and follow Victoria, because as I said before, there's a higher perspective for everything. And if you're looking to feed your soul with a higher perspective, you're going to want to follow Victoria. And thank you so much for everything you do. I love you, and I love the work that you do. And bless you. Bless you.
Thank you, Kathy. And likewise, I love you too. You and I are tag teaming this. So
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Please share. This is the perfect time for people to get some soul food here.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.